Welcome to the Rants. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your co-host, John, with my other co-host, Evan. And we're going to talk about the Cubs today. How you doing, Evan?
Oh, okay, cool. I'm doing well. I didn't know if we were just going to cover the NFL draft today or what. So talk about the Cubs. I guess that's a refreshing change.
Yeah, it is. That's what we're here for, I suppose. But, I just wanted to touch on this. I just dropped my kids off at school and I was coming home. Are we slowly turning into a society of zombies? Because, you look around at everyone and everyone's on their phone, even though they're driving.
Oh, yeah.
And they're standing on the corner on their phone. And there's everyone is just staring at this device. And I'm like, oh my God, we are turning into a society of zombies, and people are kind of swerving in the next lane, and people aren't going when the light turns green. And it's just man, it's bizarre. And yet here we are. It's not going to get any better.
No, it's definitely not. I think, between that and while, I guess I've retained some of my old ability to drive someplace without the GPS telling me exactly where to go. But just kind of we've lost any real sense of direction. And I've given up on the idea that my kids have any clue how to go. If I took away their phones and asked them to drive somewhere, there's no way in hell they'd be able to make it. You know what I mean? Just go to the next town over. And part of that is because, when we were in the cars back in the day, you could have a crossword puzzle or whatever, you know what I mean? Or something like that. You might have maybe you were cool and you had a Game Boy at one point, but you were aware of things, I feel more so of your surroundings, just being the power of observation, I think is being lost generationally, if I can be kind of the old man shaking his fist at the cloud. But if it's not right in front of people, a lot of times they have no idea. If it's taking place on their periphery, no clue what's happening. So it's little frustrating, but hey,
it's weird.
Not as frustrating. Although let me say this. I gotta get my this off my chest early, because media literacy is awful as well. People don't have a great concept. So we've been doing a lot of these when we do these shows, and Blake and Jake, Blake in particular, who's on our team here at CI, will clip out certain parts where it'll be a nice little soundbite or whatever, right? To kind of plug that, put it out there, share it on social media. People have very little concept of the fact that is but a small piece of a greater conversation, right? So
it's like a title, right? It's like the headline to
You're an idiot. It's you gotta pay attention to the context. First of all, the other thing is they'll see stuff from 3 or 4 weeks ago, because we've gotten really good traction on these things, like the Facebook reels, and it'll be something from 4 weeks ago, and then they'll be complaining the Cubs just beat the Dodgers, and it's yes, the clip you're watching was posted a week and a half ago. You know what I mean? It's not just because you're seeing it today does not imagine somebody watching Blazing Saddles and being like, oh, they said the N-word. You can't do that. It's folks, this was made decades ago.
Really.
And I'm not saying certain things that come out aren't still problematic, but it's you've got to be able to apply. You got the birds hitting on your chimney there again, huh?
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Oh, yeah. It sounded like a truck.
I wake up to that in the morning.
That's crazy. But it is really funny, how people, for instance, so here's another one. And I promise I'll shut up after this. And one more quick point. But there was the one we did when Jacob and I recorded, and I said it was embarrassing that the Cubs weren't spending much. And we're frequently reminded to this day still on Facebook that the Cubs are in first place. And it's yeah. But again, being in first place in April isn't the goal. And they failed to spend money where they needed to. That maybe it won't come back to haunt them, but it also could. The other thing I want to say is if you feel the need to be a total asshole to someone in online comments, a total stranger, to call them a name or to talk about how stupid they are. If you feel the need to do that in response to a 10-second clip on a Facebook reel, I would urge you to find whoever's been pissing in your Cheerios and stop them, first of all. And then second, go touch some goddamn grass and stop being such an asshole. Please. Just it's so frustrating. Troll culture has become so mainstream that people just feel like they can be completely out of pocket with stuff. And so I think we've been a little bit quicker on the block button because like we don't need that kind of negativity. And I'm all for constructive conversations, things like that. But like if you just come in guns blazing with something that like you didn't even bother to pay attention to what the
It's
context,
just distracting is all it is. It's a distraction from what we're talking about at the end of the day.
it upsets me not because like they made me feel bad. They hurt my fifis. It's not that. It's just like I can't understand why someone would feel the need to be a total jerk to somebody completely unprompted. You know what I mean? Like that's the part.
Well, I mean, we got a lot of different people out there, Evan.
Well, that's true, right?
So a lot of different people. And
I know.
I mean, the thing is that, and what I tell my kids all the time is that the internet gives everybody in the world access to you, every single person, good, bad, and indifferent. And so it's just something you got to keep in mind as we do this stuff. And unfortunately, the bad guys have a way of getting to you more than they ever have. They have better ways to get to you, I guess. But enough of that. Enough of that.
No more negativity.
Let's talk about the Cubs, because the Cubs are what I would call hot. Their offense is what I would call red hot. They lead the league in scoring at 6.27 runs per game. And what's really interesting is I was looking this morning at just some stats. Not only do they lead the league in runs per game, they are 27th in team left on base. So they're leaving 7.65 runners on base as a team. And that is 27th.
Mm-hmm.
And man, if you think about that, the combination of they're still leading the league in runs per game, and yet they're leaving almost the most runners on base. It's like the potential there for them to be scoring runs is so great. It's kind of scary when you think about it. And yet something that scares me, a thought that I hate thinking, but yet it's there, is that, man, what if something were to happen to Kyle Tucker? Because he is the center of all of this, right? I mean, imagine this Cubs team with Kyle Tucker out for a couple of months, and it's really different.
Yeah, I mean, well, and look at what PCA is doing, but I think some of that is like to me, it goes to volume versus per capita, right? Because if we think about obviously being the Cubs and in Chicago, and you have a lot of completely mistaken concepts about like, oh, Chicago, oh, it's so dangerous, all the murders. It's like, well, if we look at that on a per capita basis, Chicago's nowhere near the top when it comes to like Indianapolis is a less safe place, right? There's many other cities. Similarly, when you put a bunch of runners on base, you're going to end up stranding a bunch of runners, right? Like I would be interested to see where that breaks down, and maybe it is even higher, but like the idea, I mean, they're hitting, their batting average is 20, 30 points higher than what it was last year. So, they're still drawing good walks. And so they're simply putting more guys on base. And as a result, you're going to leave more. So I wonder where the percentages are, but I looked at that the other day just on how much better they're doing at scoring runners from second base on singles. Like just the percentages and getting an extra bases taken and things like that. Like they lead the league in steals, which is just phenomenal from watching a team that almost was scared to steal bases in the past, like would intentionally avoid stealing bases unless it was like, and defensive indifference doesn't count, of course, but unless it was like the most opportunistic point. And now they're doing so where it's like you're seeing double steals all the time. Tucker's got, I think, 6. Like we
saying, they lead the league with 1.54 stolen bases per game. And what's interesting is when you look at the number of times they're caught stealing per game, they're 18th in the league.
Yeah.
right? They get caught stealing a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
comparatively speaking,
But when
but
they
they're
steal
running a lot.
more, right? But and same thing, right? You're going to get caught more if you attempt more. Like that's just
Yep.
going to happen. But obviously, if they're first in steals but only 18th in caught stealing, that indicates to me that clearly, if they were first in a bad way, had the most caught stealing, that would be a bad thing. But the lower you get beyond first, right, that tells me that they're stealing more bases than they're getting caught, and in a proportionate amount, in a positively proportionate amount, but they're just doing a really good job of getting to second base, whether it's a walk or a single or an error, whatever the case is, getting to second, getting in scoring position, and then getting that run home, which is not something, and the numbers aren't staggering by any stretch. I mean, they were, at least at one point, I think they were number one in the league in terms of volume, which again kind of speaks to what we're talking about here. But when you look at like extra bases taken, things like that, we're only talking about a percentage like 2, 3, 4 points different from last year, which if you extrapolate it over the season, you look at a better batting average, it's like, I forget what I came up with, but it's something in the neighborhood of like 17 to 25 extra bases or runs or whatever, which doesn't seem like a lot in the course of a season. But when you think about how many times, man, a run in the bottom of the ninth would have prevented you from going to extras and possibly losing, or a run would have tied the game and sent you to extras. Like 17 runs, in theory, we're cherry picking and having to put them in exactly the right spots. But 17 extra runs could mean, in theory, 17 extra wins. Even if they don't break down that way, maybe it's only 2 or 3, but that's the difference between 83 wins and 86 or 87 wins. It could be the difference between 87 and 90, and so having Quentin Berry and some of those guys, I think, is really, really helpful. Like the far more aggressive approach in general, along with dudes who can, like, PCA can absolutely move, right? We talked about Tucker. John Birdie, who hasn't really contributed in many other ways, is really fast as a base runner. Vidal Brujan. So they have a bunch of guys who they can use situationally, or who, when they are given that opportunity, can get those. I mean, Dansby Swanson can get extra bases. We know Nico Horner can steal. Like, everybody on there can and will run when the situation calls for it. And I love that they're not just sitting back and like, oh, this guy's got a super slow move, we can steal on him. Like, they're doing it against everybody at all times. It's great.
Yeah, and it keeps the pressure on the team's defense, right? And so that impacts the game in so many different ways, because it's the pitcher having to think about it constantly, knowing that runners are going, the catcher having to think about it constantly and have something else in his mind, the fielders in the infield having to maybe take one step because they think something is getting ready to happen because someone's going to steal a base, and one step makes all the difference in the world. And it's just these little things, they say baseball is a game of inches. And I would say right now the Cubs are winning the game of inches. And that's why they're really doing so well.
How many inches would you say they're winning it by?
I would say 6 to 12.
All right. Size queen.
The size of the base, perhaps.
But yeah, no, I mean, they are. But those are when you look at coming back and having to beat the Dodgers by 1 run in those consecutive games, when you look at things like a bullpen that has been inconsistent, right? Because we could say bad, but bad is
inconsistent. Feels like you're being really nice.
Well, but there have been games where they've pitched really well, like that last, Matt Boyd gave up most of the runs on Wednesday. The bullpen came in and did a really good job, and Porter Hodge just absolutely shoved. So I think this is kind of what we talked about, right? It's not that they can't be good, it's that they aren't good frequently enough, and when they aren't good, they're bad, right? So there's not like that consistent. They'll throw like 5 shutout innings one game and then give up 8 runs the next. Not that I want them to see you give up 4 runs every game, but it's like you don't really know what you're going to get. But again, that's why you need to maintain that pressure on the other team and to continue to be aggressive, to not. And that's what I think, hey, they've blown leads and then come back. They've gotten out to big starts and seen what can happen. but they're not letting their foot off the other team's throat. They don't stop. And that's, whether that's at the plate, whether that's on the bases. And for those, I don't know if it makes a difference if you're watching live or if you end up listening later. My mic is all jacked up. I'm speaking into it as a force of habit because I'm just using my computer's mic. But I'm still like doing this and talking into it, but largely because my headset runs through my mic, so it makes me hear it better. So I feel like when I'm making a point, I got to talk into it, and it makes me sound louder in my own ears. It's like a really, it's kind of a crutch, but.
And so just looking at the Cubs bullpen right now, I want to highlight that, let me go back to the total. As a team, they're 27th. The bullpen is ranked 27th. If you're just looking at ERA with a 5.17 ERA, and obviously that's not great. And when you start looking at the individuals,
and I'm the one that's painting things in a positive light. It's not great.
Not great. But if you look at individual performances in the bullpen and kind of who's been real bad, you've got Luke Little, who's back down in Iowa. You've got Jordan Wicks and I think Wicks he just had that one outing so far, right?
He had two.
Two. Okay. And is he still in
No, he got
Chicago?
Optioned. No.
So he's back in Iowa. Eli Morgan is in Iowa. We're talking, those are the worst three. Nate Pearson, Iowa.
He's in Iowa.
Ryan Brazier got cut, I believe.
No,
right?
He's hurt. IL.
Oh, he's okay. He would have gotten cut.
Technically, Eli Morgan is on the IL as well.
Okay, gotcha. And so the 5 worst offenders are down. You have Ben Brown, who just had one performance. Brad Keller is next on the list with a 6.75 ERA, which is surprising, and I have to break down his performances.
That's mostly, he had one stinker of a game.
Yeah, and that's over 9 games. And then next is Porter Hodge at 5.68 ERA, and then
same deal.
You get down
one stinker.
You get down to Tealbar, Palencia, Presley. Merriweather's been great. Ethan Roberts has been solid. He's been really good.
He got stung by having to come into some dirty innings, in some of those weird games. But the one thing I look at, so Presley, here's the other thing I love, right? Like Presley didn't pitch against the Dodgers, both of which were tight games late, didn't save the game the other day. And everybody's like, what? Greg Counsell's like, oh yeah, just had to have his knee drained on Tuesday.
I forgot to tell you about biggie.
That. Because everybody's wondering, like, why the hell is our closer that we just traded for? Why is he not playing? And that's why. And then it's like, that might help to explain why he's walked more batters than he struck out. So, like, his ERA looks okay, but nobody who's watched Ryan Presley pitch this year is like, yeah, man, that's the dude I want locking it down in the 9th. The dude throwing 90 poo, who doesn't miss bats, who's not finding the zone. Now, is it possible? And my hope, dude has his knee drained, doesn't go to the IL, pitching shorthanded with again an inconsistent bullpen. There's a lot about that I don't like. And I have visceral feelings about, given how we've seen the Cubs, how they love to play shorthanded for like multiple games at a time before putting. If Ryan Presley ends up having to go on the IL for this, I'm gonna be so pissed, because it's not as if they've got a ton of guys ready to come up and take that spot. But what's even the point? But my hope is that, and it was his right knee, so he's a right-handed pitcher, so that's where he's driving off of, right? That's where he's got everything. My hope is that something with that was causing him to back off a little bit, to maybe not quite put together the performances that he needed to, because they really need, even if we look at this and say Porter Hodge is going to be the guy at the back end, which would suck for the Cubs and Presley alike, just various reasons that we don't need to dive all the way back into. But you need that guy. Like, he's a late inning experienced reliever who has shown the ability to make outs even when he doesn't have his best stuff. So they need him healthy, but it is really frustrating to me, because barring this being something where he like tripped and fell on his way into the ballpark, your knee has to have been barking at you for quite a while for you need to go get it drained. You know what I mean? You're 36 years old.
Yeah. That's not something that just happened out of nowhere and just wasn't reported.
No.
as a traumatic injury.
Yeah, so like, what the hell are we doing? It's not as if, and again, it's not as if he's been lights out, striking out 3 guys every time. Like it's been shaky, right? That's why they're calling him Ryan Stressley. And so, what the hell are we doing waiting on this and then getting it done like in the middle of a major series? You have all these days off, dude. All these days off. Like you couldn't have timed this up a little bit better and say, hey, you know what? We're gonna sit you for a while, drain this bad boy, ice it up for a few days, sit and come back. So we'll see. I'd love to be proven wrong, have him come back and just shove against the Phillies a couple days in this next series here. But man, I'm absolutely gonna lose my shit if he comes out and pitches like crap and then has to go to the IL for this. It's gonna be not fun.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. But the Cubs, speaking of days off, the Cubs will have had 6 days off. That's 20% of the month of April, which what a break. I mean, in a month where they're starting really hot and playing really well, playing against some really tough opponents. They've got by far the hardest schedule so far in baseball, and going forward, the easiest schedule in baseball, which feels great, right? Like you want to feel really good about that, but then baseball. And so, I mean, they're coming into a series against the Phillies. They came home from Arizona. They had a day off before the Arizona series, which was at Wrigley. Then they had Monday off and then 2 games against the Dodgers. And then they had yesterday off and now a 3-game set against the Phillies. And then they have another day off and then they're at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh not that far of to travel. And so it's lining up really well. I'm really interested to see this Phillies series because I think Philadelphia is legit. Not that the Dodgers and the Padres and
the Diamondbacks and the Rangers
aren't legit, but I do think the Phillies are kind of one of those teams that I could see going to the NLCS. And then the Cubs go to play Pittsburgh, and then they play the Brewers, and then then it gets hard again for a couple series against the Giants and the Mets. But it feels like the way everything's worked out has been great. What I'm really concerned about though is the Cubs have to fix the bullpen. It's great that they're 16-10. It's great that they're leading the league in runs per game. And hey, maybe that continues. And if it does, that's awesome. But I mean, having to score 10 runs to beat a team 9-10 or 12-11 or whatever the case may be is just, that's not going to sustain itself over 162 games. And certainly, obviously, Jed Hoyer and Craig Counsell are talking about this, thinking about it. What's the fix? I mean, is it just that we have to cross our fingers and hope that the bullpen starts to pitch better? Are there guys down in Iowa? I mean, obviously, Javier Assad is going to end up coming back.
Maybe he's hurt again too, though.
He's
in Chicago because he hurt his side and he had to go get checked out by the docs. I'm like, I don't know, man.
What's the solution?
I mean, yeah, cross your fingers, better luck. I mean, cause the thing I keep saying is that I still think they're going to basically, I think they've got a target for Cade Horton, and I think they want to continue to ramp him as a starter and let him get those starters innings down in Iowa before they do like they did with Justin Steele, possibly pull him, because Steele started the season in AAA Iowa, came up, worked as a reliever, or actually he started out with, I forget what it was. He started out with the Cubs, went back down for a while, came back up, did those as a reliever, went back down to get stretched back out at Iowa, and then closed the season, his debut season, as a starter. I could envision them doing something like that with Horton, right? Where they kind of bring him up to Chicago for a while in the summer, let him get a taste of the bigs, let him work in relief. Therefore, right, they've curtailed his overall innings, or curtailed kind of means cut off, I guess. So they've limited his innings without limiting his pitching, right? So he's still going to be out there getting experience. And then you can kind of bring him back, see how things feel, see how all the tests go in terms of, testing his arm strength. I know they use more than just like the armcare.com sensor and things like that. But I'm sure they got like driveline pulse and or other very similar deals that are measuring his workload beyond just innings. Because that's the thing that always bothered me is like, oh, what's his innings count? Okay, well, I mean, it's very different if you're pitching, let's say at low A and just blowing everybody away, and they're quick outings, and you go 7 innings on 70 pitches. Well, that's vastly different from going 4 innings and taking 80 pitches, or 4 innings and 70 pitches, right? 70 pitches in 4, very different from 70 in 7. But if we're going by an innings count, the 7-inning outing would be worse, when in fact it is not. But there's that. The other thing, and I lost my. Oh, here's my other train of thought. So we mentioned all the teams they've played, and if you've read the piece from earlier, maybe you already know this, but I just did it this morning, so I doubt many people have seen this. At what point in the season will the Cubs have finally played more games against the NL Central than they will have against the NL West?
It's probably not going to be for a while, because they played everybody in the NL West, I think. Well, not everyone, because they're playing the Giants coming up. Yeah,
they got the Giants and the Rockies in May. So at that point, they will have
Rockies are terrible. My goodness,
they are, which is good that they're playing them in May. The Cubs will have played by the time May concludes, the Cubs will have played 26 games against the NL West. They will not get to their 26th game against their own divisional opponents until late July. We've got 3 more months before that. Like
after the All-Star break.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I think it's like July 25th, 20. Like it's literally 3 months from today. Somewhere it's 27th, even somewhere in there. But it's wild. But I think I say that to say this, which is that part of what'll help, or should, fingers crossed, is playing lesser opponents. Whether that's hanging more runs on them, whether that's not having the potent offenses, that will help a little bit, just because it could maybe give Craig Counsell a bit more room to deal with. Right, you can leave a guy out there maybe a little bit longer. The ball is dying on the warning track instead of getting out. Maybe of course, the weather could get a little bit better. And that's another thing, and I guess we should account for that. Is that the wind at Wrigley so far has certainly not been the same as what we saw last year. Like, balls are flying out of there. And so if you make a mistake, it's going to get tagged. And so we'll see. But I think an easier schedule, the potential to maybe go with a Horton, maybe is it a Brandon Birdsell? I think the problem is, what do you do on the 40-man? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, unless Drew Pomeranz is the answer, which, geez, man, Michael Fulmer's back now on a minor league deal. I mean, they're just going to recycle those guys, because I don't see any world in which Pomeranz and or Fulmer is any sort of a viable answer for a long period of time. Love to be wrong.
No, I mean, they can come in and eat up some innings here and there. But I mean, if you're talking about, there's a big difference in eating up innings to get through a season versus having that bullpen set for the postseason. And that's a big concern, right? I mean, like you have to start thinking, I mean, this team, obviously the offense is there, but when you get to the postseason, it's pitching heavy. A lot of times it's hard for an offense to really get going. You really need to make sure you've got that bullpen set down. And so, to a certain extent, it's like, let's work through this right now early in the season and see, if we can get some people in there that can actually make sense. But I mean, if the Cubs are in first place come June, they're going to have to trade for some bullpen pieces.
Oh, for sure.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, well, I will say this though, like Drew Pomeranz hasn't given up a run in like 3.5 years. He hasn't given up a hit.
Pitched?
No, he hasn't. He hasn't pitched in Major League Baseball since 2021. So, but hey, and before I would be remiss if I didn't, Josh is watching us on YouTube there, and he asked how we're doing. I think we're doing well. I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm slightly under the weather. I'm just glad I haven't hacked up too much. I've got this weird thing going on, and we were kind of texting about this the other day. I know your kids have something. The problem with me now is that ever since I've been going out to spring training, and ever since, I talk about this, like Phoenix, right? It used to be the place, Arizona was where people would go if you had respiratory issues. It's dry desert air. But that was before it got like way, way, way more developed, and all the trees and the plants and the things that people bring in as a part of that. So usually now my allergy season starts about a month earlier than it should, because I go out to Arizona first. I travel a lot for work, so I'm down in Florida and Texas as well in a lot of these cold weather months. The problem I have now is that spring has finally come to the Midwest. I did this backwards thing where usually I'll have my cold or my sinuses and things or my allergies will start in my sinuses, eventually get down to kind of the back of my throat, and then settle in my chest. This time it's doing the opposite, where it like started in my throat, it's going up to my nose and then coming back. That's frustrating. But anyway, back to the Cubs. I just
little
just
health
share
check
that
up
with
there.
yeah, that's what we do here. That's probably why
I'm feeling good. The kids were sick, but I feel good.
Yeah, Blake should clip that and put it out there just to piss off everybody on
How dare you talk about yourself?
You bastard. That's better than talking about my kid and then having people troll me about that, which was really a fun experience last week.
Yeah. You know better. You know better.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get back to the bullpen and the potential issues there. It feels like the Cubs are going to have to probably make a trade. Maybe at the end of the day, that's what Jed was thinking when it in the offseason, a couple free agents. He lost the bidding on those free agents. And who's the guy with the Dodgers that
Tanner Scott, who gave up the home run to Miguel Amaya.
Gave up the home run to Miguel Amaya. That was sweet. All right. So you're sitting here, we're like, oh, great. Tanner Scott's coming in, we're all making fun of it. And there goes Amaya getting in the game.
And after Jacob, Zanola here from Cubs Insider, who, again, if you're frequent watchers,
Jacob who? Who's Jacob?
Yeah, he's often on here on the show with us and writes had written about how the inconsistent bullpen was due to this lack of spending, and Tanner Scott was the main one he called out. Then, of course, Scott gives up that homer. Now, he had been just completely lights out for the most part prior to that, right? And he is still very, very good overall. It's just funny how some of those one-off little things can loom large in those individual scenarios. But that was, and Kirby Yates was another one that I had been advocating for the Cubs to sign forever. And, of course, he goes to the Dodgers. It's like, man, like the Dodgers are filled with dudes who everybody wanted the Cubs to sign or trade for or whatever. Because like Tyler Glass now pitched against them. Dustin May, there was a thought that he might have been non-tendered. The Cubs should go after him. Obviously, Ohtani, Freeman. Like looking up and down the Yamamoto.
And the Dodgers are in third place too. Yeah. Let's just talk about that, right? I mean, like I cannot believe that. I can't believe they have 9. I mean, it's just they've got an all-star team.
They'd be in first place if they didn't have to play the Cubs and get beat 4 times in a row by them.
Exactly. And so it's like, and if you look at the teams that the Cubs have beaten, I mean, the Padres, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, I mean, these are teams that all have winning records, and the bulk of their losses are coming from the Cubs. And so there's a lot to be encouraged about. But again, I just want to make sure we don't forget that the offense is overshadowing the bullpen. And so is everyone concerned? Yeah, sure. But like, in the same sense, it's easy to give them a pass, but there are going to be games where the bullpen blows it and the Cubs don't score enough runs to overcome that. And I mean, it's hard to think that their offense continues at the pace that it's at. Everyone is hitting, right? I mean, like Dansby Swanson, he's starting to get a little bit better. Hasn't been great. But I mean, Nico, he's hitting for average, but everyone else, I mean, like, it's Carson Kelly. I mean, he's the next coming of Babe Ruth, right? The guy just, and he's getting fastballs and he can drive those fastballs. And so it's, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little paranoid because I'm a Cubs fan.
I think the one thing you can take solace in is that now that they've got Nicky Lopez to hold down third base, the offense can be fine. Like when he plays, and I assume he'll get a start this weekend. And as of when we started, I haven't looked. The lineup wasn't out when we started because Craig Counsell loves getting him in there later than anybody else, any of his predecessors ever did, which I love. But Lopez will be the 6th player they've used at third base. They played 26 games. And they've used 5 third basemen already to varying degrees. Like having to go to a 6th third baseman because Shaw's already been sent down. Workman was DFA'd. Justin Turner should never, ever play there again in his life. John Birdie's not a great fit over there. Vidal Brujan's played over there. It's like, and Lopez is probably statistically is by far the best one as far as his history. And I think, Shaw made a couple of mistakes over there, but he also made a couple of really good plays. Lopez could play okay over there, but that is not a dude you want at third. Like, third base needs to be a position where the dude can do some damage. Like, you can't just have a defense first, glove only player over there for an extended period of time. And that's barring a change in his offensive profile. Lopez is one of the lightest hitting dudes that you're going to find. So that's a little bit frustrating for me. I'm sure for a lot of other people. Thankfully, though, like they can bang at just about every other position. When you got a guy like PCA who's hitting for the kind of power he is at a position where a lot of people looked at it and said, hey, glove only. And we've said that on here. Like, all he's got to be is a decent, like, average to even a little bit below, and he'll still be a plus player offensively. Average to a little bit lower offensively, and he'll still be a great player overall. But center field is not normally a position where you count on that, right? And so if you've got third base as kind of a black hole of power, that's a little bit frustrating. But again, we'll see, right? Like, everything's going to balance out.
If you look at Iowa, I mean, there's some very good potential down there. You've got Ben Cowles, you've got Chase Strumpf, you got James Triantos, and Matt Shaw, obviously.
Cowles is on the 40-man, right? Like, they don't need to make a move. Like, that's why if you're going to sign Nicky Lopez to a guaranteed deal, why not just roll with Cowles? Assuming it doesn't have to be an everyday position. You know what I mean? He's already on the 40-man. Why not go with that?
Yep. Why not give him a shot? I mean, you're right. And so at what point do they start looking at Iowa and stop picking up guys like Nicky Lopez? Like, I don't understand the thought process there, I guess, why they would go with Nicky Lopez versus bringing somebody like Cowles up.
I don't know. And
what's the risk?
After having I don't know if that's a matter of internally, like, you don't want to, like, this sounds really weird, but like, what if Cowles comes up and just rakes and is like, forces the door open, and then you're like, well, crap, what do we do with Matt Shaw now?
Yeah.
I don't think that's likely, but I wonder how much they look at that and say, we got to be able to move this guy in a package, because he's not, if Shaw establishes himself, reestablishes himself, Cowles got no place to go. And Nicky Lopez is expendable.
Where we're talking about having to get help in the bullpen, I mean, you kind of want to start showcasing some of these guys.
Yeah.
And
bring him up, let him get hot, and be like, hey, what do you guys
Nico
think?
Horner, I think, is still a name that would be a tradable asset for the Cubs. When you start talking about these guys, Shaw can play second base, and so we talk about the guys who, Cowles, Strumpf, and Triantos, of which is Strumpf on the 40-man? Triantos is not.
No.
Strumpf is not. And so, so you've got some guys down in Iowa who, like, it's not going to hurt to start getting them up in Chicago and getting them some experience and showcasing their abilities a little bit to the extent that they do play well, so that you can make that trade come the trade deadline and get some bullpen help when you need it. And so to me, there's a strangely somewhat of a backlog at third base in Iowa that you could trade away. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting. Obviously it's early. It's April 25th. There's still May and June to go before we can kind of really start digging into what's going to happen before the trade deadline. But it just feels like something needs to happen there in terms of getting some of these guys up and trying to figure out who it is you're going to need to trade, because, like we were saying, something's going to have to happen at the deadline.
Yeah. Well, there's that mix between, do you bring him up to showcase him and possibly risk him being exposed at the major league level, and then having people be like, ooh, I don't know. Or do you keep him in a place where, it's like, putting him under the heat lamp, right? Let him get hot, stay hot down in Iowa. But that's what I look at with Cowles, though, in particular. That's the part. Again, you didn't have to make a other than a procedural move, but it's like you were able to go out and re-sign Lopez back, who wasn't at a point that you felt he was good enough to make your roster at all coming out of spring, and now you're signing him. Like, if that's the case, I mean, to me, that expresses a decided lack of faith in Bertie and Brujan. Understandably, I mean, that right, Captain Obvious here. But like, but what are you doing with those guys on the roster? If you can't play them at third, at least frequently enough to rotate them very much, that you have to go out and sign a guy who you cut, who the Angels just cut, who can't hit his way out of a wet paper bag. And I mean, I'm sorry, Nikki, if you're watching this, because you could out hit the crap out of me. But if we're talking about the positional need, like, it'd be one thing if we're talking about a utility, you had a stud third base, like if Shaw had established himself and you have Lopez on the bench to fill those spots, I think that's great. But having to go out and do this when you have at least one player on the 40-man in Iowa who could serve that same purpose, that's the part that kind of gets me, because it's cheap, but you got to spend money on him. You know what I mean? And you got to pay him.
That one player isn't going to make the difference. I mean, it's, I'm just looking at the stats of all the third basemen, and no one's really burning it up down there. Triantis is off to a really slow start. He doesn't have any home runs. His average is relatively low. What's his average so far? 231, with no home runs in 13 games over 52 at bats. So, I guess that's also part of the issue is that they're just not burning it up down in Iowa yet either. And so it's like, do you want to move a guy? But again, to your point, Nicky Lopez, what is he doing, right? What is he bringing to the position outside of what we think is probably going to be decent defense, which is important because there have been some defensive plays over the past couple of weeks where the Cubs have not been great. I mean, all over the diamond, except for, at short. But you start to wonder, like, Michael Busch has made a couple of errors. And he's generally good over there. Like, he picks the ball out of the dirt really well. He does some really good things, but third base has been a problem. Gage Workman made a couple of big errors in that game. And so there have been some defensive miscues that the Cubs have been able to overcome. And so thinking that they want to get their defense solidified, that makes sense. And especially going into a series like against the Philadelphia Phillies, I think this is going to be fun. Kyle Schwarber comes back, the lost son of the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs cut Kyle Schwarber. Let's just all remember that. And that will always go down in infamy as just such a bad decision. That was Jed's first decision, wasn't it?
He was in there. I mean, that was the year of the kind of tough decision, the beginning of the tough decisions, really.
The handoff where Theo walked away.
that they were, but I mean, there's also Nick Castellanos, right? Who the Cubs kind of let walk for different circumstances, certainly, but still a beloved guy for his time there. Bryce Harper, who the Cubs should have signed, who even Tom Ricketts lamented within the last few weeks that's somebody they, and it's like, dude,
what does that mean though?
Hollow ass words.
Is he mad at himself for that though, or
no? It's total lip service because he knew damn well, well, if only I'd known. Like, literally everyone else knew that, Tom.
Bryce
literally
Harper,
everyone else.
Not like he's been bad. This just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, and I think part of what he regrets is not so much not signing Harper, in general, but I think the more specific point is that knowing where salaries have gone in the time since, now they can look back on it. At the time, it was like, man, that's a huge contract. And now it's like, damn, that would have been great value.
Yeah, what a deal.
We're paying Dansby Swanson more than this guy's making from the Phillies. Are you kidding? We could have had him. Yes, you could have. And all of us told you should have. And you didn't because you were pinching pennies at the time. So anyway, whatever.
One team that has a worse bullpen than the Cubs is the Philadelphia Phillies. So
Yay!
welcome to Chicago, Philadelphia. Their bullpen has been atrocious. Their starting pitching has been pretty good. The Cubs starting pitching has been good. I mean, the team ERA is at 3.5, which is 6th in Major League Baseball. So thank goodness for that. And that's a big reason why the Cubs, another big reason outside of the offense, that the Cubs are actually doing well. But with Justin Steele out for the season, that's just such a big hole to fill. And yeah, that concerns me, right? And so another reason to be concerned is Colin Rea, he's been decent.
He's been really good. Like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, but he's been really good.
That's why I say decent, because I don't want to give him too much credit. And so going into this series, like what are the keys that you're looking for here in this series?
I mean, I think again, it's kind of like what we just saw with the Dodgers, right? Like the Cubs really had a plan of attack, I think, against Ohtani. Like they went after him. But even like Freddie Freeman didn't make a whole bunch of noise. Mookie Betts, I mean, there were some guys. Teoscar Hernandez certainly jumped all over him in that second game in particular, I think. But the Cubs went after it. Don't let Schwarber beat you. Don't let Harper beat you, right? If that's the big thing. And then I would just say the consistent kind of approach that we've seen from them this year that a lot of people think harkens back, myself included, to the 2016 season, where it's like wear them down, get into that
good
bullpen.
At bats. Yeah, really
just,
good at bats.
Keep that up, grind out that starter, regardless of what happens against that dude. You know that you can get to that bullpen if you have to, and then just continue to be aggressive on the bases. Put that pressure, like it's at some point, even if things aren't, you're putting pressure. It might be nothing for 3 or 4 or 5 innings. Eventually, that's going to find fissures and seams to exploit. And so, if they just continue, we talk about all the runs they're scoring, but so much of that is part of, it's not only a function of, I mean, or I should say it's a cause of, but it's also a function of that continual pressure. Like, they just don't stop, right? So they despite the big runs, which normally you think of as like explosive and dynamic, and while that can be true at times, this team to me strikes me as just this kind of just slowly move. They're like a glacier, you know what I mean? And that strikes someone as being slow, but it just feels like they're this force that just keeps on pushing. So you might get out ahead of them, but then you stop, tortoise in the hare, and they're still coming. They're Jason Voorhees, right? When do you ever see Jason run? Never, but he keeps catching people, and that's kind of what they feel like to me. So if they just keep that up, I think they'll be good in this one. But I think this is going to be some really fun. Like, you're talking about two teams that have a bunch of dudes who can bang, a bunch of cool personalities, and Phillies probably more so than the Cubs. The Cubs is like PCA and then some other kind of meh personalities, honestly, like from a public persona. Bunch of dudes that can bang, though. Bunch of dudes who can go out there and really put on a show. Plus 2 bullpens that are prone to letting dudes put on a show. So it could be we could see some high scoring affairs here.
We could, although the Cubs are about 2 runs per game better than the Phillies. So I think this series sets up really well for the Chicago Cubs. I am not going to be surprised if the Cubs sweep this series, as long as they come out and have those quality at bats. Stretch out the starters to where they're throwing 20 plus innings, 20 plus pitches per inning.
Yep.
And if they can do that, I think they're going to really run over the Phillies. And I think it's going to be a fun game to watch, and I'm looking forward to it.
Fingers crossed.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, everyone, thanks for joining us today. That's it for our show. Please check us out on CubsInsider.com. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, if you dare to go to those places.
Yeah, subscribe, and leave us reviews if you're listening to this on a podcatcher somewhere, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're not, that stuff all helps drive our algorithms. It pushes that stuff, into your feed a little bit more. For maybe you don't want that, but it's good for us. Even if you're
And
not
it's good
watching
for
on
you.
YouTube, if you are watching on YouTube, go out to some of those podcatchers, like, subscribe, and review. If you're listening to this on a pod, go over to YouTube, like and subscribe, and then we all win, or at least we win. But then because we win, we can keep producing more content, and you win, unless you hate me, in which case I'm sorry, but maybe that's what drives you.
Go to Facebook and talk about it.
Yeah, just
All right,
hate watch
guys.
it. All right,
We're
see ya.
out.